Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of XTalks. We'll just wait for a few minutes to let our guests and all of the audiences in, and after that, we'll kick this one off. Just a quick sound check from each of you. Can you all hear me?
Hey Sam, all good?
I can hear you.
Awesome, yeah, I can hear all of you. All right, let's kick this one off. Welcome everyone to the episode 15 of XTalks. Uh, we'll be discussing quite a few interesting things in this episode. As always, if you aren't in our Discord yet, feel free to jump in. We do have a lot of competitions and stuff like that running. We have a very thriving community that's very live in Discord. The link will be in bio. Chief, would you like to kick off with an opening statement?
Sure, Sam. So, look, we'd like to welcome everybody for the tonight's X Talk. We're going to be talking through a bunch of things around everything from gaming to DeFi to interoperability and Web3 wallets. So, looking forward to it and getting to know the speakers. I think there's one there that we already know, which I think is Redcurry, but we've also got DeFolio, Web3 GG, and Gorki.
Awesome, yeah. So I guess it's time for introductions. So our speakers, would you like to unmute yourself, give a little bit introduction about yourself to our audience?
Okay, I guess I'll start. My name is Julian Wells. I am the CMO and co-founder of DeFolio Smart Wallet. We are currently live and alpha testing for our community. Um, we are a intriguing wallet because of our function list, but we also have an MMO and a metaverse that is already built in within the system. Our functionality is top tier, and our innovative designs there's something to look at. So I'll pass it on to the next guest.
Okay, sure. So I can take it from here. In our way of looking at life is a better world starts with better money, one that cannot be printed endlessly at will, is safe, accessible, and stable. And that's exactly what we're doing. Redcurry is a real estate-backed currency providing inflation-resistant means of payment. And what we're basically solving is democratizing access to hard, secure money for everybody. Everybody meaning banked or underbanked. I'm Casper. I'm the co-founder and CTO of Redcurry team. Thank you. I'll pass it on to the next one.
Hello, everyone. My name is Alan Tomini. I'm one of the technical team at Gorki. We're building a layer one blockchain. We're building it's more than a layer one blockchain. Effectively, it's a very powerful distributed computational network, and it contains all of the things that you need to make it a layer one blockchain: a consensus mechanism and conflict detection. But we're building it to be an extremely powerful virtual machine. We believe that interoperability is really the key to moving things forward in this space, and we're moving towards positioning as kind of like a layer X, an undefined layer. Effectively, the modern paradigm in blockchain is, layer one does the security and layer two does the hard work. Gorky can do both, and we feel like we shouldn't really be dictating who does what where. But if we need an orchestration layer, we really feel that Gorky fits the bill for that kind of thing. So, and that's what we're building.
And finally, I think it's the guys from Web3 GG.
Yo, what's up, everybody? My name is JRP. I'm here representing both Web3 GG and Rev GG, specifically on this topic of interoperability, Web3 wallets, and DeFi. Rev is specifically working on a way to tokenize social interaction that hopefully will actually help DeFi protocols and in general, just like this app layer of the blockchain, understand who their audience is and also understand where their audience is coming from. I think that like although we aren't as focused specifically on DeFi as others, I think that there's so many more ways of conducting businesses and marketing that should be sustainable rather than just promoting airdrops and then not having retention. So we're ultimately focused on that and specifically also focused on gaming as we see that there's going to be a big rush into going back to traditional forms of advertising, and we're matching that as similarly as they can in other traditional forms of media. It's great to be here.
Fantastic. Well, thank you all for the introductions there. What we might do now is actually just go through a tiny little bit more about your project. And I'll start off with Julian from DeFolio. Tell us a little bit more about your project and also what inspired the creation of it. Julian, over to you.
Perfect. So we are, like I was saying, a smart gamified wallet, meaning we are one of the first fee-sharing wallets that is possible. So in the past, January 17th, a few days ago, we released our first wave of NFTs. We were able to sell those out with zero marketing. Now, these NFTs give 10% ownership of our all-chain swap. Now, the list of our functions are a little bit different than the standard wallets because we have things like the escrow system. We have the blockchain chat. We have the ledger system, the AIs within it. We have multiple functions that deviate us away from the standard wallets of a MetaMask or others. We decided to get in with the MMO and the metaverse to kind of broaden our aspect and reach out to other communities, similar to Nifty Island, how they're doing now. So we've been able to structure our metaverse to be able to get multiple communities in while using their NFTs as avatars of sorts, whether it be random NPCs within the game or bosses, just trying to bring together communities and build out a space or an ecosystem that is a seamless, intuitive hub. It came together about 3 years ago. Me and my partner were playing around with nodes at the time when they were very popular, and he had kind of built a asset manager so we didn't have to go through all of these functions and websites. And he sent it over as a joke, and I just looked at him and said we could sell that. And we ended up starting to build, and it went from a asset manager to what it is now. 3 years later, we are currently now just getting our first rounding of funds. Our wallet is in alpha testing via iOS and Android. Majority of our functions are viable. We are a sustainable project due to the fee sharing aspect. When projects like MetaMask have raised 297 million, again, we are self-funded, and we realized what they were doing in this space. As standard as it is and as minute as their project is, they're able to encapsulate everything that we do within this Web3 space or what's on the blockchain. So we decided to take that route, but do something more so for the community. We knew that Discord and Twitter and all of these functions they're great, but we do not have a interaction within the blockchain or a space that we can really hang out or have that family feel that this really started on. So we wanted to build the metaverse, and that's actually going into beta here soon. It will be specifically for advertisements, networking with our projects so they can see their NFTs. But from that metaverse, it will go into an MMO game that we're hoping to have out within Q1 or Q2 of next year.
That's fantastic. Thank you, Julian, for that overview. I think next on the list was Casper from Redcurry. Casper, it's really good to have you back on again.
Yeah, thanks for having us. Great to be here. So for us, it's very simple. Where do you store your money, right? So where do you actually put it, your hard-earned cash? And we started with that, and we believe that if you solve a problem that you yourself have, then there most likely are others who would benefit from that as well. So Redcurry is designed first and foremost to safeguard and grow your wealth, right? Empowers people, whatever your background is. Are you a Wall Street trader, or are you a 9-to-5 engineer? Whoever you are, whatever you do, You can store your wealth on a stable, democratized, accessible currency like digital asset, right? And it's always protected. It's fully transparent, and it's backed by real world asset. So that we didn't consider blockchain actually when we first started, right? We were looking at traditional finance rails. But one of the key things Redcurry is not a security, right? Anybody could go and buy stocks or ETFs or whatnot, but it doesn't behave like a currency, nor do you have any insight into what's actually backing it. So Redcurry is as easy to use as independent as Bitcoin, and it works and behaves like hard money. It's backed by prime commercial real estate, right? And this is very crucial here. It's backed by real world tangible assets. It's not a speculative asset. It's why it's real estate. Why not something else? Is because commercial real estate, even through this financial crisis we saw in 2008 and now recently with COVID, if you really look at the numbers and you look at the fundamental value, then commercial real estate, at least in Europe, has been quite stable, and it has been throughout the last half a century. And that's one benefit, of course, and then the other one is that it generates yield, right? So commercial real estate generates rental income, and all that rental income is reinvested back into the system. So now what happens? We bring real world economy revenue on to the to the DeFi industry. So you have an alternative to the speculators. Usually speculators bring money in. Now you have real world revenue coming in, and so we hit many birds with one stone here, and ultimately end up providing a financial solution for people who store their wealth in a stable digital asset. And it's fungible, so it behaves like money. It's exchangeable. It's freely tradable. It's like I said, it's like Bitcoin, independent, transparent. And as a final note, I'm not just saying transparent. We are open source. Everything we do, we publish. All the work we do, from governance to tokenomics to smart contracts, everything's public. And also we publish all the collateral assets. So the real estate assets that are actually backing the currency that you own is also published. And as a final note, actually, real final note, is that all that real estate is ultimately owned by a renounced foundation. So it truly is decentralized. There is no ultimate beneficiary owner. So it's all renounced. It's an ownerless structure. So the token itself becomes the UBO, or ultimate beneficiary owner. So that's where we come from, what we do, and how it works in a nutshell.
That's fantastic. Thanks, Casper, for that intro. Yeah, and now over to Alan from Gorki.
Hi there. Yeah. So, I mean, this project's been kind of being in development for a number of years, actually. The core development team have been putting this into action for some time, and they're basically a really passionate group of computer scientists and researchers who have been developing a highly concurrent programming language. So the fundamental idea behind it is that you in the 90s and the early 2000s, when Moore's law still applied, you could basically just develop a piece of code and then sit back and watch as computers got better and got faster, and you could effectively take advantage of that, and your code would run faster the next year without doing anything to it. And that's not really the case anymore. And it's becoming more and more obvious that as we progress, the sort of future of computation really lies in concurrent processes running. So asynchronous, concurrent processes happening. And the issue with building those is obviously that you have a problem debugging them. Anyone that's tried to sort of build a program that runs with a concurrent kind of in a concurrent system or a concurrent way knows that you get conflicts, you get issues with memory management, and you get issues with trying to figure out why things happen, why there was a result. So the answer to that is to take everything back to the process calculus. So we go all the way right back to the process calculus that allows us to derive a programming language that is correct by construction, and that is going to be defined in a very, very mathematical way. So you have this ability to build a system that is highly concurrent and can run and can take advantage of modern computational architecture. So lots and lots of cores, lots and lots of systems. In order to do that, what you need is you need a way to detect conflicts in memory. So the way that this programming language that we're building works is that it has a this paradigm called a tuple space that is how we handle memory, and everything is a process. Everything kind of is a process driven programming language. So you then have this way of executing your programs and your concurrent processes and detecting very, very quickly if there's going to be a conflict. And this kind of conflict management, the ability to handle lots and lots of things happening at the same time, really lends itself very well to being a layer one blockchain or a blockchain of any kind, because essentially what you then need is a consensus mechanism that sits on top of it, and you have the core of a distributed calculation network, powerful distributed calculation network that can execute lots and lots of things, and in theory can scale linearly as you add items in or participants into the network, because each participant brings with it computational power, and because everything's happening concurrently, hopefully the consensus mechanism happens concurrently, and as the processes are executing concurrently, and the conflict resolution is happening as a matter of course, the network scales as you add more people to it, which as those of you familiar with the blockchain world, is a thing that is not really achievable in most of the modern big players. So the goal is to build a blockchain out of this technology, but again, it's got kind of applications far reaching outside of blockchain, and that's one of the things that's particularly exciting about the project.
Alan, thank you for that. I very much appreciate it. We'll probably come back to a couple of items in that in yours shortly with another question. But in the meantime, I'll jump across to the Web3 GG guys and Rev with JRP.
Yo, yeah, I think that there's a lot to talk about, specifically like within gaming, right? We're seeing a lot of things starting to be pushed outside of the actual purview of the user and just behind the scenes. And I think that that's what a lot of gamers want. I think we're going to see so many people be onboarded in the next year or so through gaming. And, just one game that is coming out soon that I think should excite everybody is Knight's Crow. Knight's Crow is going to be launching on Wemix, I believe, in the next couple of months. Knight's Crow has launched in South Korea and was making $2.1 million per day in the first 3 weeks that it launched on mobile. And so, like, just all of that liquidity, knowing that it's going to be pushed on chain, even if it's going to be, abstracted away in some sense, is going to be really interesting. And in my opinion, for those, building in the space, specifically in gaming, like, we're seeing a really big trend for ecosystem plays. And this goes for both, games that are standalone games and also hyper casual games, which we see generally in the market make the most amount of money. I think that we're seeing a lot of trends as well, specifically of how can you incorporate DeFi into these ecosystems so that you can, actually, one, start to see, what are the effects of having, that DeFi protocol within the ecosystem, and can you actually help give liquidity to a game? Like, this is specifically really important because one of the biggest problems that we have is there's no fucking gamers. Like, there's just like no way that you can get Web3 gamers. And so anywhere that there are Web3 gamers, you want to make sure that you can incentivize them to, one, stay there, and then also obviously contribute to the ecosystem. And we're definitely seeing that. Specifically with Rev, what has been super interesting there is we're working with a lot of the top games, specifically on Avalanche and a couple of other blockchains that, are starting to understand that as they're building, they actually have to build sustainably. Like, they just can't give out tokens just to give out tokens. Like, they have to give out tokens because they think that they're going to get more money in return. I think gaming is going to be the first industry that's going to help everybody understand, like, yo, like, these people are here to make money. They're not here to, like, be a kumbaya community trying to uplift everybody. And so I think that's going to be, one, really interesting. It's going to affect the way that we build businesses in the future. And part of the reason why I love DeFi is obviously because it's been here for the longest, and it's been the thesis that we've all been building towards, and we're finally going to be seeing it implemented into gaming in a meaningful way. And obviously, I used to work for ReNFT, one of the major rental protocols in the space, specifically focused in on Web3 gaming, and that was a really big thing for a lot of people, right? But I think we're now just going back to the fundamentals and being like, what does a gamer want? What does a user want? And let's add everything else later. And game developers don't even want to touch that, to be honest with you. So anytime that there can be like interoperability within a wallet to just say like this is already there, I think is a big win for game developers. And we're going to see so much tech come out that is going to be implemented into any consumer product. Gaming is the number one market for entertainment, and it's going to really really easily push over to other consumer products that I think we're already starting to see with like Farcaster and a whole bunch of decentralized social protocols as well.
Oh, JP, thanks for that. I think you've actually raised some good points there, and I think you were talking a little bit along the lines of actually starting to see a merge between the likes of DeFi and gaming, and really a blurred line between them, and how you could potentially see gaming move across into DeFi and DeFi move across into gaming, and sort of support one another. Is that correct?
I would say yes and no. There's like a spectrum. There's games that are on-chain games, and by on-chain I don't mean fully on-chain. Like that's another spectrum. But like within the spectrum of on-chain games, there's just games that have no DeFi. But then there's games that they DeFi everything. It's like fully DeFi.
Yep.
One of those games that you can see is like Wolves game, right? I think I'm totally fucking up the name. It's like a super OG project. I think it's like Wolf Game. Like Wolf Game is a DeFi protocol, but it just has like that gaming layer on top of it. And same thing with like DeFi Kingdoms. So I think we'll see that for a lot of like Web3 native users, but in reality, the people that we want to capture are the general. Everyone says mass audience. I don't think it's mass audience. I just think it's gamers, and gamers want to play fun games. Like we saw what happened with Pal Worlds. Like everybody is talking about Pal Worlds, and imagine if we actually had something of that nature within utilizing on-chain mechanisms, and then within it, it can just be like, hey, stake Pal World for X amount. Like that is totally possible. I just think it's like a couple of years out.
Yeah, fair enough. So what I might do is move on to the next question for everybody, and that's really around focusing on the actual problems that your project is particularly trying to solve, and how does it differentiate itself in solving that problem? First across to Julian at DeFolio.
Yeah, so I think we're trying to address it in a few different ways. I think you have the convenience risk where instead of having to go to all these different dexes and landing pages, you have one hub to be able to go through and have all of your information or store your digital assets there, as well as being able to draw all of your wallets to the DeFolio wallet, meaning if you do not want to give up your MetaMask or Trust wallet, you can just seamlessly layer them on top of each other. So it'll pull those digital assets and allow you to actually manage them. I think we're also trying to address the idea of communication within the blockchain. I know there's Helium Mobile and a couple applications that have already started to come out. And we're just trying to figure out how we can actually interact and engage within the blockchain. And just like Juan was selling, I believe that the gaming idea of what this is something more than what the DGens are just used to. I think that we do need some type of normal structure where it was is either real world or Web2 in order to go mainstream. So we are trying to build that place where we can interact and engage, and we can seek info about all of these other projects, but as well as giving them utility. I think that we lack a lot of utility within this space when it comes to some of these developers, whether it be they're doing it for personal gains or the ones that are actually doing this to further this space. And there's kind of a lack of communication there as well. So just trying to engage and create that ecosystem where we can all get together, I think is essential for what we need right now in order to push this further. So there's a few different ways. I mean, I think security is a big issue. Obviously, best practices are going to go further than anything, but lacking the educational piece where even in, our project or projects that I go into, there's not a sense of, I don't want to say knowledge, but they don't really know what goes on behind the scenes, and that's an issue. We're in a space that's ever evolving, but at the same time, we have to be able to keep up with what's going on. So I think having an ecosystem where we can just all engage and interact, but having one that is more so mainstream to the point where everybody is using it is essential. So we're trying to address those issues and trying to be that centerpiece where, from whether it be degens, enthusiasts, or people that are newcomers within this space, can have a place where they feel safe. They don't have to worry about the issues that a lot of us went through. They can utilize systems like our escrow system, where you don't have to just give away your funds. Your funds go to a holding place just as well as your NFT or your tokens until it's received and that transaction is made. So I think we just need certain pieces within this ecosystem that we call Web3 and the blockchain to go mainstream. And the only way to address that is to do it independently or with projects that are supporting the better conditioning of what we're trying to build here.
Well, Julian, thank you. I think one of the areas you were talking about was really around probably the collaboration side, and that's something that we see a lot of, but we're trying to encourage more of it, and that's around projects collaborating and working together to support one another. And I know we've got Gorki on here, and they're a layer one, as are we, layer 1X, where we're actually doing our approach isn't around the computational side of the network. We're around the interoperability and being able to unite all those chains and projects together to be able to transact across a common network. But it's, I guess, each of the projects is bringing different capabilities, and it's really good to see that we can actually talk and work together. I'll now move across to Caspar and Redcurry to talk a little bit about the problems that Redcurry are solving. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks. So it's quite simple, actually. It's storing your wealth. Like, where do you store your hard-earned cash? Cash itself, like when we talk about fiat currencies, it's not obviously a good place to store your earnings, considering especially the high inflations that we have recently seen. Also, inflation is not the only problem. Some even argue that inflation is not a problem at all. But then there is debasement, there is monetary policies that are happening. Let's be honest, governmental monetary policies are designed to maintain a healthy global economy. They're not designed to think about the mom and pop shop and how they are going to have a better life. So that is a big problem that we see today, where monetary policy diverges from the good for the individual, right? So that also now rules out their digital twins. So in other words, stablecoins. Stablecoins are digital twins of just fiat currencies. They are susceptible to the same inflations as the traditional currencies. Now, then we have Bitcoin, right? Or let's say other cryptocurrencies, Bitcoin leading those. Bitcoin was designed to be a means of payment originally, and also a store of wealth. Today, it's not there yet. It's too volatile. And I mean, any merchant could accept Bitcoin technically. It's not hard to do. The problem is you don't know the price tomorrow, right? So it's very hard to predict. It's too volatile yet. And it's volatile because it's applicable to money market powers. And I would say it may become less volatile in the future. I'm sure when the adoption goes higher, it will more and more. But it's never going to be a fully stable asset, right? It's going to more behave like stocks. And that brings us to stocks, right? So traditional ETFs, or however you want to participate. I mean, who really knows where we're heading, especially today, right? I don't know for sure. And stocks are also complicated. You need to be an investor. You need to know what you're doing. I mean, can you imagine you're a husband or a wife, you have 2 children, you're working 9 to 5, you love your family and you love your job, come home at evening, you're not gonna go into learning about stocks. So it is not the best asset for the individual to store your wealth. But a digital asset that is backed by a stable yield generative commercial real estate that has a very simple investment strategy of investing into real estate in order to outperform euro inflation and to minimize any net asset value growth, puts us into a league where we don't have to compete with funds, right? We don't have to compete with real estate funds. We're not after the biggest yield. That means also that we don't have to take so much risks, go into crazy developments that usually fail if there's a black swan event. And also, it's not really. It is a fund technically, but it's not a fund that competes with others to make more yield. Our strategy is to just outperform inflation. Now, because we are on chain, and the reason is, it's extremely difficult to build a new asset class without blockchain today, while being a non-security. So it gives us a little bit of maneuvering room as well. So problems we solve is that we make it very accessible to anybody. Whether you are, like I said in the intro, you can be a multi-millionaire or you can be below poverty line. It's the same for everybody. It's decentralized, it's transparent, and because now we are on chain, we can solve some of the, let's say, other pain points as well that perhaps are not the main mission for us, but we solve those as well. So a couple of low-hanging fruits in the DeFi space. I mean, everybody who has been in this space for a little bit probably has partaken in lending or borrowing at some shape or form. And as you know, quite a big problem in the lending space in DeFi is over collateralization, right? So there's massive collateralization requirements. And that's not good for the lender. And combine that with it's actually caused by volatility, right? And combined, you take on a huge risk when you lend. What we can do is you can use Redcurry as a collateral for lending. So you don't need to over collateralize because the value of Redcurry tomorrow. And that leads us to another perhaps a problem. We see with stable coins today, like whether that is any one of those two big companies, Circle or Tether, that are issuing stable coins. They're issuing their stable coins against some asset, and it has to be cash, but it can't really all be cash. You can't run a business while putting all your eggs in cash. That's not how it works. So you need to diversify. They need to invest in stocks and bonds and etc. And that creates both an optical as well as a practical problem. Optically, they are always under attack that they're never backed fully by cash. But practically, it's actually good that they're not. But then your question is, where is the collateral, right? So there are a whole bunch of transparency issues as well as legal issues. We saw a lot of legal eyes looking at Tether in the US, like what is actually backing Tether. With Redcurry, we can issue stable coins against Redcurry, and we can remain in Redcurry 100%. It's not a problem. It's not a problem if your assets are in a stable yield generative asset class. So we can actually do what we say. So it helps to solve us from the optical side as well as be compliant legally. So these are just a couple of the problems. And maybe to top it off as a final one, something from the real estate world is quite a big problem in Europe. There is a lot of money stuck in rental deposits in Europe, especially in commercial. So usually an average rental contract is 5 years. So you need to deposit for 5 years. It's stuck. Like if your interest rate in Estonia was at 1.25%, of course it's not going to last that long. But I mean, if you are at it like 25% for 5 years, you're going to lose all your money. So you can now pay your deposits in Redcurry. The landlord holds it in an escrow. After your contract ends, you get back, then it has appreciated. Or you can even let the landlord stake it if he wants to. So there are many things you can solve with a stable digital asset that behaves like money and is a hard money. And yeah, that's what we're doing. That's just the tip of the iceberg, of course. But I'm wary of time, so thank you for the question.
Casper, thank you so much for that. Always enjoy listening to how Redcurry is progressing, and we'll talk again shortly. But now I just might move across to Alan from Gorki, and really just to tell us about the what problems that you see you're trying to solve.
Hi there, guys. So yeah, I think we're two of our main things is essentially computation, but also there's the problem of interoperability, and we're not necessarily just talking about interoperability within the blockchain space, but actually within the old sort of Web2 world. If you think about the problem of adoption is that there's effectively this kind of like day zero issue where there's an entire world of systems that have been built up over the last 30 or 40 years that sit there with databases and protocols and connections and APIs. And in an ideal world, as a Web3 kind of evangelist myself, I kind of think, we should all be moving towards this sort of decentralized and democratized space. I think it benefits humanity for us to have this much more democratized world that Web3 promises. But the issue is, how do we bridge all these old school systems onto this Web3 space? Because they're not going to stop and redevelop and start again. What we need to do is be able to kind of help smoothly move them on board. So what that requires is a blockchain that is able to handle this sort of integration in an orchestration of the kind of these other spaces into it, and the sort of where we see the existing Web3 world failing is in the computational power that they have within their virtual machines and the ability for these virtual machines to handle this integration. There's latency when you talk to a database, for example, and there's issues with having legacy code and other libraries that you have to integrate. So for a merely Turing complete smart contract engine that simply just sort of moves balances around or just sort of changes the number within a wallet address or an array, that's not really viable. So what we're building at Gorki is effectively a very powerful virtual machine that can handle complex computations, but also can kind of import other libraries into the smart contract engine. So one of the examples I've used is you can kind of reference a jar file that has a Java code in it, and it just simply executes the code, almost like in an old school program, you'd have like a virtual function pointer where you kind of point towards something and you tell it to execute. Now, in order to do that, what you need is a blockchain that's able to handle this kind of this interaction. So you need asynchronicity, because what you can't have is lots and lots of processes queuing while you're waiting to hear back from some amorphous database that takes a long time to index everything that it's looking at. You also need the ability to handle data, because you want to be able to kind of load data and load things into the engine and move chunks of data around. So one of the things that Gorki does, if I reference back to what I was saying about kind of this tuple space and this memory management for being a concurrent computation engine, is it doesn't really see a difference between data and code. And what that means is we can load MP3s or MP4s or PDFs onto the chain, and you can move data around quite seamlessly in the system. So the idea is we want to basically build a computation engine that is able to handle the interactions with the kind of old school world, handle interactions with the plethora of other technologies out there. I mean, I'm a believer that there will be no one winner in terms of the layer one space. I think that the survivors of the layer one battles will have to exist together, because they all solve slightly different problems and are being designed to solve slightly different problems. So interoperability is a key component, and also being asynchronous and concurrent is a key part of it, because you can't have your blockchain being gummed up by one single process that's taking a long time to download something from some old school system. So the problem that Gorki is effectively solving in a nutshell is this sort of like, can't we all just get along kind of problem that blockchain seems to have, not just within the blockchain space, but also out with in the old Web2 world.
Alan, thank you. I would actually love to probably extend this by about 2 or 3 hours so we can geek out on that. You've just gone through so much that has been part of my life for the last 20 or 30 years. So, but And you were talking a little bit about the interoperability, and I think you've hit the nail on the head there, because one of the key items is these chains that just don't talk to one another. They've not been designed to do that from scratch. What we're providing with Layer 1X is that ability for all those chains. Now, I think time will tell about the chains that'll survive out there. From you start looking at the likes of Ethereum and Avalanche and Solana, etc. They've all got different capabilities, even down to the smaller chains. But I think being able to provide that interoperability is an absolute key. And then providing all of that distributed net processing, the data handling, all those components will need to come together if we're going to be able to provide and replace the likes of the Web2 space or the traditional computational systems. But what I might do is move on to JRP again at Web3 GG, just to talk about the problems you're trying to solve.
Yeah, again, Web3 GG is more of a community for Web3 gaming professionals, specifically on the Rev product, which we already have seen a lot of traction. Honestly, it's as simple as user attribution. Like, where is your user coming from specifically for games? Like, where is your gamer coming from? And then we also connect with other protocols to understand what is the gamer actually doing within the game, and ideally one day be able to say the gamers that have higher TVLs, lower cost of acquisitions, are actually coming from this place. Currently, we're focused on user attribution specifically for influencer marketing, which has been really interesting because we've tied that in with community building. And so, as we grow out our database of creators, we think that we can create or we know we can create a social graph that will help us understand a little bit more about, what is the value being provided to these creators. And on that back end, we can also track some of that, the value that is being transferred into these smart contracts that ideally brands want to manage, right? Who wants to pay a creator $1,000 if you don't know what's going to be coming from that creator? And so we're focused on a variety of different things. I think even in general, in the marketing space within Web3, there is no marketing tool that allows you to just aggregate all of your links and understand in real time what is happening from both a creator standpoint and also from your own community standpoint. And so we have that all built in. At this point, we're really kind of working on providing the features that is going to ultimately have a higher user retention. But we're ultimately solving the problem of UA and working with other protocols and other organizations to help expand this vision and ultimately also help them build out their communities.
Well, JP, thank you so much for that. Look, I've thoroughly enjoyed listening to the capabilities that you guys, all the various projects are offering, and I think we've got such a diverse range of them tonight today in the talk. So what I'll do is I'll move on to our next question, and it does. I think Alan, you touched on it earlier, and that's really around the interoperability and how you guys see the current state of that interoperability, and what do you see what do you anticipate as in achieving a seamless communication between all these various blockchains out there? Firstly, across to Julian.
Yeah, I think we're actually in a pretty good space. I think a lot of the filler projects that were just used to whatever for funds or whatever their use case was are kind of drying up, and the main projects that we know are going to survive within this market are built for us to be able to interact with anyway on the back end. So majority of data can be pulled. You can interact with most contracts at this point. So I believe we're in a good space. Just heading further down the line, I think it is going to get interesting. As we know, there are multiple different projects coming out. The layer ones are coming out. So it's making it easier for projects like ours to be able to thrive and implement these systems, but it always does come down to the cost and scalability. So at this point right now, the pricing for the RPCs and servers and to be a part of a lot of these systems is rather high, especially if you're self-funded or you're trying to get in within this market or being a developer within this space. It is a high cost, but with what is going on, I believe we're in a good space. There is enough communication now to just reach out to teams similar as this. This was maybe a month in the works to get on this space, so there is enough room to be able to grow and reach what we need. But at the same time, it's always going to come down to the scalability of your business. Is it worth actually being migrated on some of these blockchains? Does it actually have a use case within these blockchains, which a lot of projects just don't have, but the ones that do, we're all engaging. I mean, we're pulling data from multiple chains, multiple projects, multiple APIs. So we're everywhere within the space, and it hasn't been hard at all. I think we're definitely in the right direction. I hope that as technology continues to grow and it's ever evolving at this point, we stay online with this then rather than going back to what it was. But seeing projects like Immutable X and how they've had such a big impact on how a chain is perceived and what is capable of, knowing that at one point the gas was a lot higher. And now it's one of the biggest chains or supporters for when it comes to gaming, which which you would assume to be an expensive cost. So I think we are headed in the right direction. We just need more developers and more teams as well as projects to align themselves in where we're building instead of just doing this spread out and hoping it aligns in the back end.
Julian, thank you so much for that. Across to Caspar with Redcurry.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure the other speakers today here know a bit more about interoperability than us, as we are more from looking at this from a financial angle. But nevertheless, we are building on chain, and for us, accessibility is very important. So being available on different ecosystems is highly important, and we are developing our cross-chain strategy as well. And I agree with the previous speaker that a lot of things can be done today, right? And that's not a problem, but the problem is, can it be done cost effectively, and can it be done in a standardized way? I mean, like, can you imagine using internet today without using HTTP or TLS or SMTP or other non-standards? I mean, you wouldn't, right? And you wouldn't see such a mass adoption of internet without those, whether de facto or not, standards. And this came with the adoption of or maturity of the technology, right? I mean, and some of them are the worst protocols you could think of. Like, even the authors of SMTP say it's horrible, but it runs our entire email systems. So I think it just we are there where a lot of things can be built, but we're not there where we have a standardized approach. That makes things complicated. It makes things expensive for developers to, the access level. Can you imagine, like, for a backend developer in Java or React developer, it's much easier to jump in there and start learning than it is to become a blockchain developer and starting to go through all of these different technologies available. So I think there is time will help here, but also technologies like what Layer 1X is building, making it easier for others to come on and build apps on top of. When it comes to, I guess, the evolution is that, time will tell who will be the winners and who will not win, and which kind of standards and platforms and technologies will be adopted. It's very, I don't know who, but I believe it must happen for there to be mass adoption, especially from the developer side point of view. That's from my side.
Yeah. Caspar, I think you hit the nail on the head that we really don't know who's going to be around in a few years with all the different chains. But the key for us is that we will support them all. And those that rise to the top and remain are the ones that will have that true interoperability. They don't need to develop it themselves. I think you're right. Being able to provide that base layer capability, the layer one, is the key. And on that, I'll move across to Alan. I know you've spoken a little bit already, Alan, about the interoperability side. But if there's anything you want to add to it around achieving that seamless communication.
I think the best way I could summarize it would be to echo some of the statements here about the developer kind of onboarding side of things. I think we don't actually have an adoption problem. What we have is this kind of interoperability problem, and also an onboarding problem. Because if I think back to, if you look back at the 80s or the 90s, if you wanted to be a developer, you have to know Fortran or be able to do punch cards and all this kind of stuff. And when I was learning to be a software developer and working with C++, there was a reasonably high barrier of entry for using some of the programming tools that were available to me. And now when I look at sort of my more recent projects as a data scientist and working in AI, there is the open source world and the developer experience for someone who does something like Python, for example, or someone who works with like TensorFlow or Keras, it's an entirely different world. And I feel like we're still stuck in the ages of really struggling to onboard developers into projects purely because of, and I think it's mostly because of the architecture and the needs of the early blockchains, to learn Solidity and the programming languages with all the various different blockchains. There's a reason why everyone's kind of obsessed with EVM compatibility, and that's because they have the biggest pool of people who have spent time working in that environment and know how to use it and know how to build with it. What we really need is a seamless developer environment, a low infrastructure developer environment. They should just be able to deploy code to a node and it should just run. We shouldn't have to be compiling into different libraries and loading things up and moving things around in this quite complex manner. That's why it costs so much to develop on a lot of these chains, and because you need to pay a lot of people who have learned how to use all this stuff. What you want to get to, and what I feel like we need to get to, is the point where any kid or any kind of reasonably talented person should be able to just kind of learn how to work with a blockchain. So the interoperability side of things is part of that, because you then have a smooth environment with lots of client libraries that can connect to everything, and that's where we are today with the internet. You have so many different ways of sending data around, so many different kind of APIs and points where you can connect with everyone, and it's matured to that point. And I think that we need to get a lot of these technologies to the point where they have the same level of maturity.
I can't agree more with you on that one, totally. Just being wary of the time, I'll move across to JRP from Web3 GG and Rev, just to talk about how he sees interoperability in the Web3 space, and how we can actually get that seamless communication between the various chains.
Yeah, I think, again, I'm 100% focused on Web3 gaming. We've seen some of this already, of interoperability within kind of going omni-chain, with a lot of the games wanting to implement, layer 0, for example, to just move assets around. I think, honestly, in the interoperability question is much less of a want. I mean, it's a want, but it's much less of a need right now for Web3 games, because what they need to figure out is how to develop great games, right? If you don't have gamers playing your game wanting to move assets around, then it doesn't really matter. I think that they definitely want, and everybody wants to kind of play out the story of interoperability. You can take one NFT into another game. In my opinion, that is just decades out, just because game developers are focused on how can I make more money with Web3 tooling. And I think that's the right way to think about it. We've seen NFL Rivals launch on the mobile app store, 4 million downloads on iOS, making about 15 to 20% of their revenue on the secondary market. That is a big fucking deal, because in a regular gaming market, you're not making that money. And so we're figuring those things out, but I definitely think interoperability is on the minds more of the gamers. And we've seen people like Nifty Islands that recently launched, who almost their entire value prop is based off of interoperability, which is really interesting to see. And the market seems to enjoy it, right? I think, I don't really follow hype projects, but if I see a project that is hyped for, a very long time, at least 3 months plus, then it's probably a legit fun game. But if it's not, then I'm not really sure. So we're just kind of waiting to see those retention numbers on these games, and maybe interoperability is the answer to those. And if it is, then we're going to see a lot more games jumping into that. But as of right now, we're not seeing that push yet.
Yeah, that's fair enough. I think in the gaming side, it is a slightly different space, but being able to go for users to be able to take assets cross chain, I think of any type, they even down to paying paying for the games themselves, paying for actions in the game. I think it can be big. Moving on a little bit, we are very short of time because I know we've got another commitment coming up. But just maybe very quickly, I'll ask Julian and everybody to actually talk through a little bit of a closing statement from each of you.
Yeah, sure. So we do appreciate you guys taking the time and giving us a platform to speak. But with that being said, yeah, we do have another wave coming out on February 1st with our partners Alpha Shares. We will be selling via Polygon. This is one of those projects we hope you guys take a look at. We know it's something different. It's a little bit bigger than what's typically out there, but we have spent a lot of time and a lot of hard work trying to build something we feel is going to be useful for people like us in this space that are traders, that are NFT enthusiasts, that are trying to build on the back end and get into the gaming side, and just trying to grow this ecosystem. So this is going to be a long year for what's going on with wallets, and I hope you guys just stay tuned to what is going on when it comes to the Web3 space. As we all need some place to store our digital assets, as the other person was saying. As exchanges fall and these things become security risk or deemed security risk, and our funds are not necessarily safe, it's best to start looking for options that are built for us. So just keep that in mind, and hopefully you guys will take a look and join us in this fee sharing and perks and all the things that we have lined up. So we do appreciate you guys for your time, and thanks to all the other guests for coming in and speaking as well.
Thanks there, Julian. And we'll jump now across to Casper at Redcurry again.
Yeah, sure. Well, thanks again for having us over here. It's always a pleasure. Great to see so many people here as well. So thanks for everybody who came to listen in. We do have a program right now where we call it Money Renaissance. So you can come and join our Renaissance program. You can become an OG and our club member, and you will have benefits when we do our governance token launch, and it's coming sooner than you think. So it's right behind the corner. So come join our program, and you can see it in our website, or come to our Discord. You can see our socials, and then become a member of that, and see how you can contribute. It's not much you need to do, but it's more of an educational program. It's more to how to, financial education wise, and then get all the benefits that are included in DeFi projects, as we all know. So thank you, everybody, and I'll hand it over back to you.
Thank you so much for that, Casper. Now across to Alan from Gorki.
Yeah, thanks for your time. It's been great to participate in this. It's really interesting to hear everyone's opinions, and it's nice to hear that we're all kind of aligned on where things need to go and what things need to happen to get there. So Gorki, we're building a lot, spending a lot of time with the developers. It's got a small core group. We're undergoing a little bit of website maintenance and rebrand, so watch this space for announcements and some big things happening in the future, hopefully.
Thank you so much, Alan. Appreciate it. And now finally to JRP at Web3 GG and Rev.
Yeah, don't need to do anything for us. Hopefully one day you interact with the Rev system because one of your creators is using it to understand, to know more and do more with their audience. So really looking forward to see how we can really, I think, start off with Web3 gaming, and I think eventually we'll reach, honestly, all aspects of content creation. This is not a Web3 product. This is a product for content creators that utilizes Web3 to easily help manage their community. So thank you again for having me, and it's been great to hear all the other speakers as well.
Absolutely. And look, thank you all. I do appreciate your time today and coming on. It's probably one of the benefits of my job is to actually sit here and listen and talk to you guys. Sometimes we just don't have enough time. but been really good. Thank you so much for it, and I'll hand back to Sam.
Yeah, I think this was a really great episode of X Talks. We learned heaps of stuff, and I would like to say a big thanks to all of our speakers and a big thanks to all of our audience. As always, if you aren't in Discord, aren't in Layer 1X Discord, then now is the time to jump in. We have a lots of competitions and stuff like that running within our Discord server, where you can win Layer 1X tokens. As always, please check out the projects of our speakers and see you all in the next episode of X Talks. Thank you and bye bye.